No one took advantage of me. That's what weak people say to preserve their own innocence. But today, at 58, I can understand that what happened was simpler, colder, and more humiliating. Just as Machiavelli described centuries ago, those who confuse naivety with kindness teach everyone around them exactly how to use them. Every repeated favor, every loan never repaid, every door opened without cost was a practical lesson about my place in the system. There was no conspiracy. There was incentive. When I needed help, the silence wasn't betrayal. It was coherence. Relationships don't operate on emotional memory, but on operational patterns. Something Machiavelli understood long before modern psychology. Those who always receive without paying learn only one thing. You are not a person. You are a resource, and resources are not helped. They are replaced. If you've ever felt that someone took advantage of you, comment below. Admitting that pattern isn't weakness, it's the first step to stepping out of it. In the summer of 1995 in Phoenix, Arizona, Mike showed up at my apartment late in the afternoon like he had so many other times. He didn't knock. He just walked in and commented on the heat, the traffic, work. He sat on the couch and said the month had been tighter than expected, that he needed some money, just until the next paycheck. There was no formal request. It came up in the middle of the conversation, like an administrative detail. I did a quick calculation, went to the bedroom, came back with the money, and placed it on the table. He smiled and said, "You're a lifesaver." It felt purely functional. At the time, I was already known as the nice guy. That's how I was introduced when someone new joined the group. Talk to him. He's the nice guy, the predictable one, the fixer, the one who doesn't create friction. I accepted the label without resistance because it came with access and trust. I didn't negotiate amounts. I didn't set deadlines. I didn't ask for guarantees. If someone needed something quickly, I handled it. Saying yes was more efficient than explaining a no. And at that moment, it still felt like control, not concession. The money never came back, not in any concrete way. Mike always said he'd pay me on the next paycheck, then next month, then when things settled down. I never pressed him. Months later, he brought it up again, saying he was tight once more, but that this time he'd take care of everything together. "I'll pay you both," he said, as if reorganizing a balance he never felt as debt. I agreed without argument. It still didn't bother me. It sounded like a normal delay within a stable relationship. At that time, nothing felt out of place. Helping didn't hurt. There was no tension, no discomfort, no sense of loss. The nice guy label still sounded like character, not function. I believed that was friendship working the right way. Everything felt balanced because the flow had never been tested in the opposite direction. As long as I said yes, the system stayed stable. And stable systems are rarely questioned by those who benefit from the illusion. A few weeks later, still in 1995, the pattern began repeating. Sarah would call saying it would be just a few people on Saturday. Sometimes Jason jumped into the conversation explaining he couldn't use his place. Other times Mike mentioned it was better to avoid his building for a while. Mine emerged as the natural solution. There was no direct request. It was always presented as the obvious path. I agreed without debate. In my head, it confirmed that I was surrounded by good, spontaneous, low-maintenance people. A great group. There was a month when this happened every single weekend, Friday and Saturday, always with the same promise of a small gathering, always with far more people than agreed. 5 turned into 20, then more. It became impossible to cross the living room without squeezing past someone. The bathroom couldn't keep up. One night the toilet clogged. Another time the kitchen cabinet door came loose. A couch got scratched. A glass shattered a lamp. Nothing big enough to start an argument. just small damages that stayed with me after everyone left. Complaints from the building started coming in. A notice from the superintendent taped to my door about noise, then a fine. One Sunday morning, I found a note saying the next incident wouldn't be tolerated. I read it, folded it, and put it in a drawer. I didn't mention it to anyone. I chose to absorb it as a normal cost. I told myself these things happen when a place is full, that it was the price of keeping the group together, of not being the guy who causes problems. The following Sunday, I woke up alone again, cleaning up what was left behind. Trash piled up, sticky floors, furniture out of place. Messages came in while I scrubbed the bathroom. Last night was awesome. Everyone had a great time. Thanks, nice guy, I replied briefly and kept cleaning. I thought it said something good about me, about my life at that moment. A full house, people comfortable, constant movement. It still felt like choice. It still felt normal. And as long as it felt normal, nothing seemed wrong. Still in 1995, Jason asked to borrow my car. He didn't frame it as a favor. He said he needed to take care of something quickly across town and would be back before evening. He spoke with the calm of someone who already counted on the answer. I handed him the keys without hesitation. The car was idle. I had no plans. Lending it seemed reasonable. He left saying he wouldn't be long. The naturalness of the gesture didn't come from trust. It came from repetition. It had become part of how we functioned. Early that evening, the phone rang. Jason spoke fast, defensively, saying he'd been in an accident. He explained another driver had cut him off, that it wasn't his fault. He said he'd already taken a taxi and would text me the location where the car was left. He didn't ask what I wanted to do. He didn't ask if I needed anything. He simply informed me and hung up. The decision had already been made. The problem had already changed owners. I went to retrieve the car alone. The bumper was crushed, the sides scraped, the mirror shattered. The inside was filthy. Empty bottles on the floor, ashes everywhere, a heavy smell. While clearing the back seat, I found a used condom under one of the seats. I took the car to the shop and heard the estimate. The amount equaled almost a month of my income at the time. I paid it. Days later, a traffic ticket arrived in the mail from that same day. That stayed with me too. In the days that followed, Jason acted as if nothing had happened. In a quick conversation, he asked about the car, something like, "Did you manage to get it sorted out?" I said yes, that everything was taken care of, that he didn't need to worry. He commented that if I needed anything, I could just let him know. I repeated that it was all good. He smiled, relieved, and before changing the subject said, almost laughing, "That's the nice guy." The loss had already been absorbed. The role had been fulfilled. The year 1996 didn't start well for me. I lost my job early in the year and went almost 2 months without finding another. At first, I tried to maintain the appearance of normalcy. I woke up early, left the house, printed resumes, told myself it was just a matter of time. But time began to weigh. Bills didn't wait. Money shrank every day. With each unanswered week, the feeling of being between jobs gave way to something more uncomfortable, a real need for help. When I decided to call, it wasn't impulsive. I waited. I thought. I chose my words carefully. I called Mike first. I didn't ask for new money. I asked for part of what I had lent months earlier. I explained the situation calmly. On the other end, I heard well-practiced phrases. "Man, you're a good guy. You'll get through this. It's just a phase." He said he couldn't help right now. Promised to look into it later. We hung up. I waited days. Nothing. I called again. This time the tone changed. "Man, stop pressuring me. I can't." He paused briefly and added dryly, "You lent it because you wanted to. Now deal with it." I tried Sarah next. She listened silently for a few seconds, sighed, said she was sorry, that I'd always been strong, that she admired how I handled things. She said it was unfair what was happening to me. She didn't mention money. She didn't ask how much I needed. We ended the call with kind words and no concrete gesture. Jason took days to respond to messages. When he did, it was short, almost automatic. He said he was busy, that he couldn't help right now. After that, he didn't reach out again. No one asked how my days were going. No one called to see if I'd found anything. Support existed only as long as it required no action. When the money finally ran out and I received the eviction notice, I tried something even simpler. I asked if I could stay a few days at someone's place while I reorganized. I didn't mention a long-term plan. I didn't dramatize. The responses came spaced out and evasive. Can't right now. I already said I can't. On one call, I heard a man, understand, I can't help you, said with impatience, as if I were crossing an invisible line. After that, some calls went unanswered. Messages were seen but not replied to. There was no money, no shelter, no presence, only absence. And in the repeated silence of the following days, it became clear not as a thought, but as weight that the flow had never gone both ways. The following 2 months were quiet. No requests, no favors, no one knocking at my door. It was during the process of getting back on my feet that something finally organized itself inside me. It didn't come as a dramatic revelation or a catchy phrase. It came as an uncomfortable realization. Everything I'd lived through over the previous years pointed in the same direction. I had only managed to stand back up because, at that moment, there was no one left to use me. Prosperity didn't begin when I found another job. It began when I stopped occupying the role that kept me available to everyone except myself. Revisiting those situations with distance, I noticed something hard to admit. I wasn't good in the way I like to believe. I was naive. I confused ease with virtue, absence of conflict with maturity, availability with character. That naivety didn't make me admirable, it made me functional. And constant functionality, when it meets no limits, turns into silent exploitation. Not because others are evil, but because convenience rarely questions its own morality. That's when I understood my relationships weren't built on trust or mutual respect. They were organized around my inability to say no. I sustained the bond by offering unrestricted access, absorbing costs, solving problems that weren't mine. While that worked, I was valued. When I stopped working that way, I disappeared. There was no betrayal. There was coherence with the foundation everything had been built on. That realization didn't make me bitter. It made me sober. For the first time, it became clear that continuing to be the nice guy wasn't a sign of kindness. It was a risk. A psychological, financial, and social risk. Thriving would require abandoning that comfortable and deceptive identity, not to become harsh or hostile, but to stop being predictable. There, without announcing anything to anyone, something ended. Not a phase, a role. I remember it like it was yesterday. About 3 months after being ignored by everyone, Mike reappeared. The message was casual, almost affectionate. "Hey, nice guy, how you doing?" He said he'd heard I was doing better, that things had settled down, asked if we could talk, mentioned he needed something really important. He didn't make a direct request. He simply reactivated the same access as always, like someone testing an old door. I replied calmly, "Sure, we can talk." We met at a cafe in the late afternoon. I arrived with someone else without making a big deal of it. We talked a few minutes about neutral things until he brought up what mattered. He said he was tight again, needed money, and that this time he'd make things right. He spoke with the same lightness as before, as if the flow had never been interrupted. I listened silently and said I didn't see a problem helping. Relief immediately showed on his face. Then I added something simple. Before that, I needed to be paid back what he already owed me. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Mike tried to laugh it off, said that was old stuff, that we'd never formalized anything. He said I'd always been easygoing about those things. That's when my friend introduced himself as a lawyer. Mike reacted by saying I had no proof, that none of it would hold up. I didn't argue. I just showed him the messages, the promises, the confirmations. He stayed silent for a few seconds and then said, "You weren't like this." I answered without hardness. I didn't stop being good. I stopped being naive. Justice isn't coldness, it's boundaries. The conversation ended there. The request didn't move forward. Access was shut down. There was no fight, threat, or humiliation, just the collapse of an old expectation. That was the moment everything finally reorganized. Machiavelli was right. The problem is never losing kindness. It's confusing it with weakness. When you stop being predictable, the system adjusts. Some walk away, others reveal themselves, and what remains isn't loneliness, it's structure. After that meeting, the pattern broke for good. Mike didn't disappear, he paid the debt, every last cent. No side conversations, no attempt at closeness, no apology. Objective transfers, short messages, administrative tone. The financial settlement didn't revive the bond, it simply closed an old account. Sarah never called again. Jason vanished completely. There was no argument, no formal breakup, no explanations, just the end of movement. When the nice guy stopped being predictable, the system adjusted on its own. Where access was no longer automatic, presence no longer made sense. Today, at 58, I can clearly see what changed from that point on. My life became quieter, but not emptier. Silence brought organization. My time stopped being consumed by urgencies that were never mine. My money stopped evaporating into favors that never returned. The few relationships that came after were slower, less invasive, less dependent. No one showed up asking for something right away. No one treated my availability as guaranteed. For the first time, I didn't need to prove my worth by solving other people's problems. Existing was enough. With that distance, something became evident in almost mathematical terms. Those earlier relationships weren't sustained by trust or mutual respect, but by operational convenience. As long as I functioned without cost, I was kept in the loop. When I stopped functioning that way, I was discarded without conflict. Not out of individual cruelty, but systemic logic. Machiavelli was right. Those who become too predictable stop being people and become tools. Tools aren't questioned, they're used, until the moment they stop working. That's why I end this story without resentment. I didn't lose friends. I lost dependent access. The distancing wasn't punishment, it was filtering. And that filter reorganized my entire life. If this text unsettled you, maybe you're also occupying a role you never consciously chose. So here's the invitation. Subscribe to the channel and keep following these analyses without moralism or comforting lies. This isn't about being better. It's about stopping being functional for systems that use you while you call it friendship.